Montserrat Caballé looked straight at Freddie Mercury and said one word, impossible. She believed a rock singer could never touch opera. But 3 minutes later, the opera house was silent, because Freddie Mercury sang something no one knew he had been hiding for 20 years. The Grand Théâtre del Liceu was preparing for its annual Spring Gala, one of Europe's most prestigious opera events. Montserrat Caballé had just finished rehearsing when her music director, Josep Caminal, approached her dressing room with unusual nervousness. Maestra, there is someone here who wishes to meet you, a musician from England. Montserrat barely looked up from removing her stage makeup. Josep, you know I don't meet people before performances. It disrupts my concentration. This is different. He says he has written something for you, a song. He's been waiting for 3 hours. Montserrat sighed with the weariness of someone who had spent 40 years dealing with aspiring composers and starstruck fans. Who is this person? His name is Freddie Mercury. He's the singer from Queen. The name meant nothing to Montserrat. She had dedicated her entire life to opera, to Puccini and Verdi and Mozart. Rock music was a world she neither understood nor cared to explore. Tell him I appreciate his interest, but I cannot help him. I am an opera singer. He should find someone from his own musical world. But Joseph persisted in a way that suggested something unusual was happening. Maestra, he brought something, a recording. He asked only that you listen for 2 minutes. If you don't like it, he will leave immediately. Montserrat's curiosity was barely piqued, but she agreed out of politeness more than interest. 2 minutes, then he leaves. When Freddie Mercury walked into Montserrat Caballé's dressing room, he looked nothing like the flamboyant rock god who commanded stadiums. He wore a simple dark suit, his signature mustache neatly trimmed, his manner almost shy. He carried a small cassette player in hands that were visibly trembling. Maestra Caballé, he said quietly, his famous voice somehow smaller in this intimate space. Thank you for seeing me. I know you're busy. Montserrat studied him with the practiced assessment of someone who had evaluated thousands of singers. He looked nervous, genuinely nervous, which surprised her. Rock stars weren't supposed to be intimidated by opera singers. You have 2 minutes, Mr. Mercury. Joseph says you've written something. Freddie placed the cassette player on her dressing table and pressed play with fingers that shook slightly. The opening notes filled the small room. Piano, then orchestration building, then Freddie's voice singing words that made Montserrat sit up straighter. Barcelona. It was the first time that we met. The melody was beautiful, genuinely beautiful. It had operatic structure, dramatic build, the kind of musical sophistication that Montserrat had not expected from rock music. But when the arrangement indicated where a second voice should enter, a soprano voice, her range exactly, Montserrat understood what he was proposing. She stopped the tape abruptly. Mr. Mercury, this is lovely, truly. But you're asking me to sing with you, yes? Rock and opera together? Yes, Maestra. I wrote it specifically for your voice and mine together. For Barcelona, the city that represents everything beautiful about... No. Montserrat's voice was firm, but not unkind. Mr. Mercury, I have spent 40 years perfecting my craft. Opera is not something you mix with other genres like ingredients in a recipe. The techniques are completely different. Rock singers, even talented ones, do not have the training to... I understand, Freddie interrupted gently. You think I can't sing opera. You think rock and opera can't coexist in the same space. I think they are two different worlds, yes, and those worlds should not collide. Freddie was quiet for a long moment, and Montserrat thought he might leave. Instead, he sat down in the chair opposite her, and when he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that made her pay closer attention. May I tell you something about my mother? Her name is Jer. She's from Zanzibar originally, moved to India, then to England. She worked so hard to give me and my sister everything we needed, even when we had almost nothing. Montserrat softened slightly. She understood mothers who sacrificed everything. That's lovely, Mr. Mercury, but when I was 7 years old in Zanzibar, my mother would listen to opera on the radio. We couldn't afford records or concert tickets, but every week BBC World Service would broadcast opera, and my mother would close her eyes and let the music transport her away from our small house and our struggles. He paused, his eyes distant with memory. One day she caught me listening with her, Maria Callas singing Un bel dì from Madama Butterfly. I asked my mother what the words meant, and she translated for me. One beautiful day, she said. When the aria ended, I was crying, and I didn't know why. Montserrat found herself leaning forward despite her intention to remain distant. My mother told me something that day that I've never forgotten. She said, Farouk, that was my name before I became Freddie. This music is God's gift to us. It reminds us that beauty exists even when life is hard. Never forget that. Freddie's voice grew quieter. When I went to St. Peter's boarding school in India, I learned piano. But secretly, I also learned operatic technique from my music teacher, Mr. Fernandez. He had trained in classical voice before becoming a school teacher. He taught me breath control, proper support, how to access the passaggio, everything. Montserrat's eyebrows raised. You studied operatic technique when you were a child? From age 9 to 16. Nobody knew. When I came to England and started playing rock music, I never told anyone. Rock stars aren't supposed to love opera. It wasn't cool. It wasn't rebellious. So I hid it. Why are you telling me this now? Freddie looked directly at her, and Montserrat saw something in his eyes that surprised her. Genuine vulnerability mixed with absolute certainty. Because you said rock singers can't sing opera, and you're right, most can't. But I can. I've been trained. And I've kept it secret for 20 years because I thought the two worlds couldn't mix. Just like you said, but I don't want to hide it anymore. Montserrat studied him carefully. So you're saying you can actually sing opera? With proper technique? Yes, Maestra, that's exactly what I'm saying. Then prove it. Montserrat's challenge was direct and immediate. Right now, no recording, no studio tricks. Sing opera for me, a cappella. If you can truly do what you claim, I'll know immediately. Freddie stood slowly, and Montserrat watched as his entire posture changed. His spine straightened, his shoulders dropped and opened, his breathing deepened. The shy rock star disappeared, replaced by something she recognized instantly, a trained singer preparing his instrument. Which aria would you like to hear, Maestra? Montserrat chose the most difficult piece she could think of, something that would expose any technical weakness immediately. Nessun Dorma. If you can sing that properly, I'll believe you. What happened next would remain one of the most profound moments in Montserrat Caballé's 40-year career. Freddie Mercury, standing in her opera house dressing room with no accompaniment, no microphone, no stadium of screaming fans, began to sing Puccini's most demanding tenor aria. Nessun Dorma, Nessun Dorma, tu pure, o principessa. The voice that emerged was not a rock voice. It was operatic, fully supported, properly placed, with the kind of technical precision that comes only from serious classical training. His breath control was impeccable, his passaggio smooth. His understanding of the Italian text went beyond mere pronunciation to actual comprehension of the emotional content. Montserrat's mouth fell open. This was not a rock singer attempting opera. This was a legitimately trained operatic voice that happened to belong to a rock star. The dichotomy was so unexpected, so impossible according to everything she thought she knew, that she found herself unable to speak. Freddie built to the aria's famous climax, Vincero, 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 and held the final high B with such power and beauty that Montserrat felt tears forming in her eyes. Not tears of sentimentality, but tears of recognition. She was hearing real artistry, real technique, real understanding of operatic tradition from someone she had dismissed seconds earlier as merely a rock singer. When the final note faded into the silence of her dressing room, Montserrat sat completely still for several seconds. Then she did something she almost never did. She stood and applauded. Impossible, she whispered, but her voice carried wonder rather than disbelief. How is this possible? You're a rock singer. Freddie's vulnerability returned immediately after the performance, as if the operatic confidence could only sustain itself during the actual singing. I'm a singer, Maestra. The genre is just the costume I wear, but underneath, I've always been trying to do what you do, use my voice to create beauty. Montserrat sat back down, her mind reeling with the implications of what she'd just witnessed. Why did you hide this? With your talent, you could have had an opera career. Because I loved rock music too, and everyone told me I had to choose. Opera people said rock was garbage. Rock people said opera was pretentious. Nobody believed the two could coexist in the same person, let alone in the same music. He sat across from her again, and now they were no longer diva and supplicant, but two musicians recognizing each other as equals. That's why I wrote Barcelona, not to prove anything to anyone else, but to prove to myself that I don't have to choose. That beauty can exist in many forms. That rock and opera aren't enemies, they're family. Montserrat was quiet for a long time, processing everything she'd heard and witnessed. Finally, she spoke with the kind of honesty that decades of fame had taught her to guard carefully. Mr. Mercury, Freddie, you have embarrassed me today. Freddie looked stricken. Maestra, I didn't mean to. She raised her hand to stop him. I judged you without knowing you. I assumed because you were a rock singer that you couldn't understand my world, my art. I was wrong, and being wrong is something I don't experience often. She stood and walked to the window overlooking Barcelona's Gothic quarter, the city spread out below like a tapestry of history and beauty. I have spent my entire career protecting opera, guarding it from anything I perceived as a threat to its purity. And in doing so, I think I've forgotten something important. What's that? That opera itself was once considered vulgar. Mozart was criticized for writing music that was too accessible. Verdi was called common. Every generation of opera was once the popular music that shocked the establishment. She turned back to face him. You're right. The genres are just costumes, the voice, the heart, the desire to create beauty. That's what matters. Montserrat walked back to her dressing table and picked up the cassette player, rewinding the tape to hear Barcelona again from the beginning. This time she listened differently, hearing not a rock song trying to be opera, but a genuine piece of musical art that happened to bridge two worlds. We will record this together, she announced with the kind of finality that suggested the decision was absolute and unquestionable. And we will perform it, not hidden in a studio, but live, in Barcelona, at the Olympics if possible. The world should see that these boundaries we've created are artificial. Freddie's face showed a mixture of joy and disbelief. Are you serious, Maestra? Completely, but I have one condition. Anything. You must promise me that you'll stop hiding your operatic training. The world deserves to know that Freddie Mercury is not just a rock star. You're a complete vocalist who has mastered multiple traditions. Your mother gave you the gift of appreciating beauty in all its forms. Honor that gift by being honest about it. Freddie's eyes were wet now, and Montserrat understood that she had touched something deeper than professional validation. My mother always said that beauty should never be hidden, but I was afraid that if people knew I loved opera, they'd think I was pretentious or fake. Then we'll show them together that loving both rock and opera doesn't make you pretentious, it makes you complete. Over the following months, Freddie and Montserrat worked together creating something unprecedented in music history. They recorded Barcelona with full orchestration, their voices blending in ways that shouldn't have worked according to conventional wisdom, but created something transcendent because both singers understood that technique without heart was meaningless. But the real magic happened during rehearsals when Montserrat witnessed Freddie's absolute dedication to honoring operatic tradition while bringing his rock sensibility to the performance. He never tried to diminish her voice or compete with her. Instead, he supported her, complimented her, created space for her brilliance to shine while adding his own unique color to the musical tapestry they were weaving together. You understand something many opera singers never learn, Montserrat told him during one rehearsal break. This isn't about showing off your voice. It's about serving the music. Your rock career taught you humility that some classical singers never develop. Freddie smiled. Queen taught me that the song is bigger than any individual member. The music has to work as a whole. I think opera and rock actually have that in common. When it's done right, Every element serves the emotional truth you're trying to communicate. The planned performance for the 1988 Barcelona Olympics became the culmination of their artistic partnership. But as the date approached, Montserrat noticed that Freddie looked increasingly tired, sometimes struggling with stamina during rehearsals in ways that seemed unusual for a performer of his caliber. One afternoon, she confronted him directly. "Freddie, you're not well. I can see it. Should we postpone the performance?" Freddie was quiet for a long moment before answering. "Maestra, I made a promise to my mother that I would never hide beauty out of fear. This performance, singing opera with you in front of the world, this is me keeping that promise. Whatever else is happening with my health, I need to do this." Montserrat understood that he was telling her something important without saying it directly. She didn't push for details. Instead, she simply said, "Then we'll make sure it's perfect. For your mother. For everyone who thinks different worlds can't coexist." The performance on the evening before the Olympics opening ceremony was transcendent. 65,000 people witnessed Freddie Mercury and Montserrat Caballé singing Barcelona together, their voices creating something that defied categorization. It wasn't opera. It wasn't rock. It was simply beautiful. Backstage afterward, Montserrat embraced Freddie with tears streaming down her face. "You did it. You proved that the boundaries are illusions." Freddie, exhausted but radiant, smiled. "We did it together, Maestra. Rock and opera, darkness and light. All of it can exist in the same space when we stop being afraid of mixing them." When Freddie Mercury died 3 years later in November 1991, Montserrat was devastated. At his memorial concert in 1992, she performed Barcelona alone, her voice carrying both parts in tribute to the man who had taught her that artistic boundaries existed only in minds too afraid to cross them. In a 2016 interview, near the end of her own career, Montserrat reflected on her collaboration with Freddie. "He taught me that I had become too rigid, too protective of opera. I thought I was guarding tradition, but I was actually limiting it. Freddie showed me that opera is strong enough to embrace new forms, new voices, new possibilities." She paused, her voice thick with emotion. "That day in my dressing room when he sang Nessun Dorma, I realized I had been wrong about everything. The genres don't matter. The labels don't matter. Only the beauty matters. And Freddie Mercury created beauty wherever he went, whatever he sang." Today, Barcelona remains a testament to what happens when artists refuse to accept artificial boundaries. When students at opera conservatories study the piece, they learn not just about vocal technique, but about the courage required to be fully yourself in a world that demands you choose only one identity. Freddie Mercury kept his promise to his mother. He never hid beauty out of fear. And in doing so, he gave the world something it didn't know it needed. Proof that a rock star and an opera diva could create magic together, simply by recognizing that underneath all the labels, they were both just singers trying to honor the gift their mothers had given them. The gift of understanding that beauty transcends any single tradition, and that the bravest thing an artist can do is refuse to be limited by other people's definitions of what is possible.